Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.
Hello, good evening to our viewers in the United States, and a special good morning to everyone down under in New South Wales. Welcome to a special edition of Grid Live Pre-Race. I'm Adam Lemerise, and with me is Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. It's that time of the year again, the great race in Australia, the Repco Supercars Championship, Bathurst 1000, Australia's greatest crown jewel event. Which pair of drivers will conquer the mountain in 2022?
And Adam, before we begin, have a bit of breaking news to share from that side of the world over in Japan. Alpine F1 just announced they've signed Pierre Gasly to replace Fernando Alonso in the driver lineup starting in 2023. So Gasly will indeed leave AlphaTauri, and he'll be going to Alpine alongside his fellow Frenchman Esteban Ocon. Ocon and Gasly, that'll be an interesting duo. Two French drivers for that French Formula One team. And well, Adam, we don't know who'll conquer Mount Panorama yet, but coming to Bathurst is always such a special privilege. 28 cars, 56 drivers with one goal in mind: tame that mountain and take home all the glory. One driver taking all the glory this season has been Shane Van Gisbergen, inching closer to his third Supercars title and second Bathurst 1000. However, this is an endurance race, 1,000 kilometers, multiple pit stops, driver changes, a lot more things happening compared to your traditional Supercars race weekend. Do these additional factors make an SVG Bathurst 1000 win not so straightforward, and what makes this great race so special?
Well, Kobe, I'll start with the second part of the question. This race is like the Daytona 500, Indy 500, Monaco Grand Prix. It's a race that stops the nation, Australia. And to give our viewers some perspective of what a week in Bathurst is like during the Bathurst 1000, in the beginning of the week, they have a transporter parade on Main Street where fans can go see their favorite, transporters and wave to the drivers. After that, there's a driver's parade where fans can wave to their favorite supercars drivers. After that, there's an autograph session where fans can go and say hi to their favorite drivers, sign autographs, take pictures. And then they head to the infield at Mount Panorama to camp. People camp there for over a week. They camp with their friends, family. They've been gone for 5 years, 10 years, long time. And not only do they see great action from the supercars, there's a tremendous support category action as well. And now when it comes to Shane Van Gisbergen, well, what he's going to have to do this on Sunday in Australia is have a good race, a safe race, and a clean race. When you're watching this race, Kobe mentioned multiple pit stops, driver changes. Well, there's one other thing that you'll see, and that's brake pad changes. And they have a brake pad caliber that they'll use. And you'll hear on the team radios after each pit stop, pump the brakes, pump the brakes, because if you don't, going up Mountain Straight, you'll crash into Griffin's Bend. And that has happened in the past before. So SVG needs to have a clean race, safe race, and good driver changes with his co-driver, Garth Tander.
Yeah, a lot more things that Shane Gisbergen will have to do heading into this Bathurst 1000 race weekend. And usually when we talk about our pick of winners, almost everybody picks Shane Van Gisbergen to win every single race because he's been so dominant. But this is actually one race where I actually would advise people to really think about their choice and not just be like Shane Van Gisbergen, Sharpie, because as we mentioned, there's a lot of factors that goes into winning the Bathurst 1000, and it's really shocking everything that Shane Van Gisbergen has accomplished in his supercars career. He's only won this race once before. He doesn't have a second or a third trophy yet in the Premier Crown Jewel Repco Supercars Championship event. Kind of like we talk about Scott Dixon only having one Indy 500 victory in the NTT Indy Kart Series. A lot of people are waiting for Shane Van Gisbergen to get that second Bathurst 1000 crown. It very well could come this year, but I think considering all the factors, it's an endurance race, not a super sprint weekend that he's used to dominating. He's going to need Garth Tander to take care of the car, not make mistakes. He's going to need to be perfect himself as well. So I think there's a lot more factors that go into Shane Van Gisbergen being a lock for this Bathurst 1000 win. And something else that might shake things up is the weather. It's been a wet race weekend so far on the mountain, and rain could play a factor heading into the race, although the most recent weather forecast shows less of a chance. We've seen the drivers testing out the tricky weather conditions on the Dunlops, some having a tougher time than others. In yesterday's Armour all qualifying session, the rain provided a surprise into the top 10 shootout. Coming up in just a few hours, Richie Stanaway was fifth quickest in a one-off Erebus Motorsport entry. If rain arrives on race day, adding to the challenge of an already difficult Bathurst circuit in dry conditions, could this set the stage for a possible upset winner?
Yes, Kobe, it sure could. But there's a lot of drivers who are really good in the wet condition. We talked about Shane Van Gisbergen. Another driver that you got to look out for is Cam Waters from the Monster Energy Tickford Racing Ford Mustang GT. He's very good in the wet. And yesterday during qualifying, he sat on provisional pole. So Anton Pasquale is another driver that you could look out for in the wet. But I don't think we're going to see an upset this year.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Adam. I don't think we'll see an upset either, although it would be quite a story if Richie Stanaway and Greg Murphy, Greg Murphy, the longtime Supercars veteran, if they're able to go out there and win this race in wet weather conditions. Richie Stanaway was mighty impressive in yesterday's qualifying session, and for a driver, it's been a very long time since he's been in the seat. I know he left Supercars, retired from racing altogether, thinking it's all over, and then boom, here he is. Richie Stanaway's back racing again at Mount Panorama. So if it rains, like you mentioned, Adam, there's a lot of rain masters in the Supercar series. Also got to watch out for Taz Mostert, who's extremely good in the wet. These drivers from Australia are super impressive, and if we get some wet weather conditions, I guarantee you're going to see some absolutely superb driving. And speaking of the top 10 shootouts, Stanaway was one of 3 Erebus Holdens to make it, with Brody Kostecki and Will Brown going 9th and 10th fastest. At the top of the board, Cam Waters from Tickford Racing. His teammate James Courtney's in too. Last year's winners got into the top 10. Lee Holsworth second fast, and Chaz Mostert was right behind him in third. With Zach Brown on site watching his Walkinshaw Andretti United team, Nick Percat joined teammate Mostert in making the shootout. Then you have one car apiece from Red Bull Ampol Racing and Dick Johnson Racing. And the drivers were Shane Van Gisbergen and Will Davison, but SVG received a 3-spot grid penalty for making contact with Macaulay Jones in qualifying. Those AAA and DJR cars have a lot of speed, as always, more important on weekends like this. With a crown jewel event on the line in the practice sessions leading up to qualifying, Will Davison's number 17, Shelby Power Ford, let practice 1 and 3, practice 2 and 4. The Red Bull Ampol Holden was quick, and Garth Tander topped the co-drivers only practice, and his teammate SCG had the number 97 at the front in the fourth practice session. Tander and SVG's teammate Jamie Wincup qualified 14th, while the other Shelby Power Florida Anton De Pasquale was the first to miss the cut in 11th place. Is it disappointing that Red Bull Ampol and Shelby Power couldn't get both cars into the top 10 shootout?
Yes, it is, Colby. And you think of Jamie Wincup, after everything he's done, he's won the Bathurst 1000 multiple times. He's a multiple Repco Supercar champion. And you always can count on him to get the job done at Mount Panorama. But it didn't happen this time. Fans were shocked. And Anton De Pasquale, 11th fastest. That's shocking. He always has pace in that Ford Mustang GT. To me, it's disappointing. I know it's disappointing for fans or watching in Australia.
And Adam, we actually have some more breaking news from the world of Formula One. At the top of the show, we announced Pierre Gasly would be going to Alpine, and now his replacement at AlphaTauri, the young Dutchman Nick de Vries, finally gets the call, and he'll be racing in Formula One next season with the AlphaTauri squad. So big congratulations there for Nick de Vries after winning the F2 title and the Formula E World Championship. So a lot of news happening over at the Suzuka circuit in Japan, and we're just talking about Jamie Wincup. It actually caught a lot of people off guard to see him in this qualifying session, which was actually one of the biggest controversial moments in Armor All qualifying, was Jamie Wincup qualifying number 88 Holden. Traditionally, we'll see the driver running full-time qualifying the car and not the co-driver. Young Brock Feeney took over for Wincup after he retired from full-time race at the end of last season. As I mentioned, Wincup wasn't quick enough to advance, qualifying down in 14th place. Do you think the decision to have Wincup qualify the car came down to his years of experience in treacherous track conditions, or more so the team's lack of confidence in Feeney?
Well, I think it was Jamie Wincup's experience running here at Bathurst, especially in the wet conditions. I'm happy that Jamie qualified the car over Brock Feeney because Brock's not used to these wet conditions at Bathurst. So I think it came down to Jamie's experience and his running in the tricky, wet, rainy conditions.
Yeah, it was probably a good idea for the team to choose experience over inexperience here, because Brock Feeney, he doesn't have the same, obviously being a rookie, he doesn't have the same type of experience that Jamie Wincup has in the wet weather conditions, going around the mountain like this, and a rookie can get caught out very easily in these track conditions in one of the most important qualifying sessions of the year. So I have a feeling that at Red Bull Ampol Racing, they were thinking about it and thought it was best to put the veteran in instead of Brock Feeney. Brock is just a rookie, so it was probably they probably thought it was for the best to let him, just sit on, watch while Jamie Wincup tried to do his thing. Unfortunately, it wasn't good enough, and I'm sure a lot of people had questions after Wincup didn't make it into the top 10 shootout. Did they make the right decision by choosing Wincup instead of Feeney? And while Wincup was on track qualifying his car, Brock Feeney stood in the garage with the engineers wearing a headset and looking on. Feeney is a Repco Supercars Championship rookie, as I've said, and one of the best cars in the series. And his teammate is Shane Van Gisbergen. SVG's dominating, winning most races, leading the standings. Feeney's sixth in the driver's standings, hasn't gotten his first one yet, and he hasn't been able to match SVG yet in performance. In what's been a year of learning for the 19-year-old, there will surely be more expectations for him next season with an entire year of Supercars competition under his belt. Will getting benched for Wincup in qualifying hurt Feeney's confidence or motivate him to work even harder to become a better driver?
I think this is motivation, and it's going to help Brock Feeney. You mentioned Kobe. Brock Feeney took over an iconic seat, number 88 Red Bull Ampol Racing Holden Commodore this year. He's learned a lot, and in future years, Brock Feeney will be a champion. He'll be a Repco Supercars Championship contender. It's only his rookie year, so he has a lot to learn. So I think this will motivate Brock Feeney going forward.
Yeah, we can only hope that'll motivate the young rookie driver instead of hurt his confidence. I know Brock would have rather be out there, qualifying the car, showing what he can do, try to make it into a top 10 shootout. But at the same time, unlike most races, this is not just an individual performance. This is a team performance, and sometimes you have to do what's best for the team, and sometimes the team think it best to put in another driver during qualifying. Of course, when you're running full time, you want to be the one out there driving, and it's really disappointing, can be disheartening to see someone else in your car, especially when it's the boss man. I guess it's taking his old ride back for a spin. But all in all, you really can't expect a young 19-year-old kid to come in here, immediately match Shane Van Gisbergen right off the bat. I think as Brock continues to get races under his belt, learning everything he's been through in his first season of supercars racing, I think in 2023 we'll see a much improved Brock Feeney in that number 88 car from Red Bull and Pole Racing. And a quick follow up before we move on to our next segment. Adam, in your opinion, who takes the pole for this year's Bathurst 1000, the top 10 shootout coming up in just a few hours' time?
Well, Kobe, after looking at everyone who's in the top 10 shootout, I'm going to go with the man who's on top when it came to qualifying. Cam Waters in that Monster Energy Tickford Racing Ford Mustang GT. I think he was on top for qualifying. I think it continues after the top 10 shootout.
Yeah, Cam Waters is really good at Bathurst. Always does so well in qualifying at this particular circuit. But I'm actually going to go with last year's winner to take pole position. I think Chaz Mostert has another great performance in him, and he'll be leading the field to green tomorrow in the Great Race of Australia. And it's the 65th running of the Great Race, 1,000 kilometers at Mount Panorama, a 6.213 kilometer or 3.861 mile 23 turn circuit. Over 6 decades of racing at the mountain, we've seen some pretty incredible moments over the years, and greatness on display. In last year's Bathurst 1000 pre-race show, we highlighted a driver who was nicknamed King of the Mountain, Peter Brock, who holds the record for most Bathurst 1000 wins of all time at 9 victories, and tied for second all time is the great Jim Richards and Craig Lowndes, who is actually competing this weekend in a third Red Bull and Pole Triple Eight entry with co-driver Declan Fraser. Lowndes is looking for his 8th Bathurst 1000 victory. We also have a trio of 4-time winners in the field: Garth Tander, Jamie Whincup, and Greg Murphy. And one of the most memorable moments in the history of the Bathurst 1000 is Murphy's famous Lap of the Gods. Adam, what made Greg Murphy's historic lap such a special Bathurst moment that will still be talked about 10 years from now?
Well, Kobe, it was the first time ever that someone went under 2 minutes and 7 seconds at Mount Panorama. Give a viewer some perspective of that iconic lap. The gentlemen who are calling that lap for Network 10 Australia, Matt White, Neil Crompton, who's a former Supercars competitor and former racer of the Bathurst 1000, they couldn't believe it. They were shell-shocked. There even was an in-car camera with Greg Murphy's number 51 Kmart Holden Commodore. And before that, the gentleman who was on top was John Val. And if you watch the video on YouTube, you'll see the splits when we talk about it. It was iconic, incredible. No one thought it could be done. And even NASCAR driver Parker Kligerman on Twitter said he remembers this lap very, very well. After that lap, Greg Murphy went down pit road, took off, screamed in his helmet, took off his helmet, and jumped out of the car and waved to the fans. No one thought it could be done. Nobody. But it happened. And they'll talk about this lap, Kobe, for many, many years to come. It was an iconic lap, amazing lap. It was one of the best laps that you'll ever see at Mount Panorama. No one thought it could be done. Well, Greg Murphy sure did it. And the fans and the Network 10 team of Matt White and Neil Crompton, they were excited.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Many people are going to be talking about this lap of the gods for so many years, and it's crazy. After all this time, Greg Murphy's still out there racing in the Repco Supercars Championship, although not full time anymore. Really loves coming to the Bathurst 1000, and actually in practice, Greg Murphy actually set a lap in this year's car that was quicker than his lap of the gods, which is really incredible. The longevity of Greg Murphy, his passion for this sport, this event still runs deep after the lap of the gods happened. And this is the final Bathurst 1000 with the current generation of car in 2023. We'll see the Gen 3 supercars on the track, and I will say those are some really good looking cars. Ford's continuing with the Mustang model, while we'll see the Holden Commodore go away in place of a name that people from the United States are very familiar with, the Chevrolet Camaro. With the Chevrolet brand swapping places with Holden to represent General Motors and supercars moving into a new era, how sad is it to see the Holden name go away?
Kobe, it's sad. It's very, very sad, because when you mention the Repco Supercars Championship, you think of two manufacturers, Holden and Ford, red versus blue. Holden is the Chevrolet brand down under in Australia. And there's been so many iconic moments when it comes to Bathurst 1000 for Holden. We mentioned Peter Brock. He was known as the King of the Mountain. He won in Holden. Shane Van Gisbergen, Garth Tander, Jamie Wincup, Craig Lowndes, among the winners. Even Mark Scaife, who's on the commentary team down in there at Mount Panorama, he won this race in Holden. It's sad to see the Holden Commodore going away. But like you mentioned, these Gen 3 cars that are coming in, the Chevy Camaro and the Ford Mustang, they look awesome. They look incredible. And they revealed the Ford Mustang at Mount Panorama. So, and people went absolutely crazy. Even Dick Johnson got to sample the new Gen 3 Ford Mustang on a lap at Mount Panorama. So it's sad to see the Holden Commodore going away, but it's going to be really cool to see two iconic American brands, the Ford Mustang and the Chevy Camaro, going wheel to wheel, door to door, down under in Australia.
Yeah, and I know the American racing fans are certainly going to be familiar with the name Chevrolet. They may not be familiar with the name Holden, though. And as you said, Adam, Holden's been around for so many years. It's going to be sad to see them go. But at the same time, you're going to be opening up a brand new chapter with Chevrolet. And I was actually reading an article on motorsport.com earlier in the week saying that supercars would like to potentially go with Formula One, like they do with the Australian Grand Prix and supercars. On the support bill there, they like to go to one of the North American rounds with Formula One to showcase these cars. Especially with the North American fan base, recognizing the Chevrolet brand. I think it would be really cool if we were able to see supercars compete with Formula One in the Miami Grand Prix, the U.S. Grand Prix at Coda, or even the new Las Vegas Grand Prix coming up. I know it'll be a headache for all the teams. Add some more money to the cost to try to get the cars over to the States, but I think it would certainly be worthwhile in the future to bring the Repco Supercars Championship back to America so we can see them race over here, because I know a lot of people have really picked up on the supercars in the recent years, watching it from afar, and it will be a great opportunity. It will, for a lot of people, be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see these cars and these drivers in person, so hopefully with Supercars International Strategy Team, they can try to get an international race here in the United States. And reflecting back to last year's grid ranking championship battle, Shane Van Gisbergen was sitting comfortably to win the grid ranking championship, running strong in the 2021 Bathurst 1000 until late race issues derailed him to a disappointing 18th place finish. SVG led the ranking for nearly the whole year and lost it right there to World Rally Championship Sebastian Ogier this year. All Van Gisbergen needs to do to clinch the 2022 grid ranking is finish in the top 10. It's really that simple, right? We thought it was so simple last year. He basically had to do the same thing just about, but unfortunately, towards the end, it went away. Will SVG wrap up the grid ranking at Bathurst or fumble the ball again at the 1 yard line?
Well, Kobe, I think at the end of the Bathurst 1000, we're gonna say Shane Van Gisbergen is the 2022 grid ranking world champion. He's been so dominant this year down there in Australia in the Repco Supercars Championship. It's really cool to see someone from Supercars leading the grid ranking world championship. There's so many good drivers in there from all different disciplines of motorsports from across the world. So I think SVG wraps up the 2022 grid ranking world championship this weekend at Mount Panorama.
I'm definitely in full agreement with you, Adam. I think SVG will also become the 2022 grid ranking world champion this weekend. He'll get the one that got away last year. I don't see him fumbling the ball at the 1 yard line this time around. I don't think he'll have a moment like Russell Wilson had in that awful, horrendous, and completely terrible Thursday night football game last night between the Broncos and the Colts. That was one of the worst games I've ever seen. But getting back on topic here, SVG is quite a remarkable driver, and for him to win the grid ranking world championship this year, considering how competitive it is with all these different disciplines all over the world, with the little formula that we have set up to rank them all, and if you're interested in learning more about the grid ranking and the formula we use, be sure to visit gridranking.com, and there's a page on our website explaining how the entire process works. And SVG having a good race is key to taking the grid ranking this year's Repco Supercars Championship, and also he'll need his co-driver Garth Tanner to avoid mistakes. As we know, the defending winners are split up with new co-drivers. Chaz Mostert's teaming up with veteran Fabian Coulthard, while Lee Holsworth will have Matthew Payne driving with him, the young driver who will replace him next season in Grove Racing's full-time driver lineup. Two big names from Porsche are here for the race. Jackson Evans is co-driving with Jack Smith, while IMSA GTD Pro Champion Matt Campbell hopped on a plane after Motul Petit Le Mans last weekend to fly to New South Wales to co-drive with David Reynolds. Adam, which driver pairing is the strongest, Mostert, Coulthard, or Holsworth, Payne? And what are some other lineups that you'll be closely watching?
Well, Colby, I'll say Mostert and Coulthard is a top pairing. A couple others you need to be aware of. We mentioned Anton De Pasquale. His co-driver is Tony DiLiberto. The other shall be power racing car for Duke Johnson Racing has two brothers, Will Davison and Alex Davison. We can't forget Shane Van Gisbergen and his co-driver Garth Tander, Jimmy Wincup and Brock Feeney, Craig Lowndes and Declan Frazier, Mark Winterbottom and his co-driver Michael Caruso. And give a call. And actually, in this race this year is a really cool story with two drivers from the Dunlop Super 2 Series, which is right below the Repco Supercars Championship. They're in a seat called the Caltex Young Guns. It's Matt Chada and his co-driver Jalen Rowbottom. So, and of course, we can't forget Cam Waters and his co-driver, James Moffat. Kobe, who are some of the co-drivers you're looking out for when it comes to the Bathurst 1000?
Well, Adam, I'll actually go back to the first question first about which driver pairing is the strongest. I have to agree with you with Mostert and Coulthard. Last year was so incredible watching how well Chaz Mostert and Lee Holsworth worked together. But as y'all know, Lee Holsworth is going to be retiring from full-time racing at the end of the 2022 Repco Supercars Championship season. So maybe in the future we could see Mostert and Holsworth reunite for the Bathurst 1000. Maybe as soon as next year. But Fabian Coulthard, I think that's a really good choice as well. Coulthard knows how to get the job done around the mountain. He's been in fast cars like Chaz Mostert's number 25 Walkinshaw and Andretti United machine. Yeah, so Coulthard is quite a veteran of the series, and I think that's the best driver that you could get for that seat. I'm sure Coulthard is really happy to be in a competitive race winning car. Because you remember after he lost his ride with Dick Johnson Racing, he was towards the back of the field and having quite a rough time out there. So I'm sure Fabian's very excited to be on a car that can compete rather than just riding around and hope you can hold on for a good finish if chaos happens ahead. And you asked me about some other driver lineups that I'm going to be looking at. For starters, I'm going to be looking at the number 26 from Grove Racing, David Reynolds and Matt Campbell. Think it's really cool. Matt Campbell's coming home to do this race, the Bathurst 1000, because I remember covering him last weekend at Petit Le Mans in the GTD Pro class with in them. So alongside his teammate Matthew Jomine when they wrapped up the Enzo title, and we know the Porsche GT3 car is completely different from this Ford Mustang Australian supercar, and it'll be fun watching Matt Campbell. Try a different discipline race. I know he's done this race in the past. He has some supercars experience, had some really good runs, but I know it's quite difficult when you're driving something else all year long and try to hop into supercars because it's a completely different animal. And another driver lineup I'm going to be watching is Greg Murphy and Richie Stanaway. I was really surprised by Richie Stanaway's pace so far this weekend. And if some things happens, we get like a really crazy race, some rain. Stanaway looked good in the rain. If we are to have an upset victory in the Bathurst 1000, people may think I'm crazy, but keep an eye on that number 51 Airbus Motorsport Boost Mobile holding Commodore of Greg Murphy and Richie Stanaway. I think that could certainly be a driver lineup to keep an eye on.
We've digested this race from top to bottom and bottom to top. We told you about some of the drivers to watch out for in this great race. But now it's time that Kobe and I make our picks for the great race, the crown jewel event in the Repco Supercars Championship, the Bathurst 1000. And if you want to share your picks, use the hashtag pick a winner on social media. And if you're outside the top 10, get your first pick right. It's 5 extra bonus points. With that all being said, all right, Kobe, at the end of 1,000 kilometers, who takes home the legendary Peter Brock Trophy and wins this year's Repco Bathurst 1000?
And I know it may shock a lot of people, but I'm actually not going to pick Shane Van Gisbergen to win the Bathurst 1000. Believe it or not, I think it's going to be wide open compared to most race weekends. And I'm going to go with the driver that Adam picked to win the pole for this race. I think the number 6 Tickford Racing Monster Energy Ford Mustang, Cam Waters, James Moffitt. That I think that this is going to be their year to get it done. That they're such a strong driver pairing, and at the end of the day, I think Cam Waters, James Moffitt, both of those two drivers are going to be standing at the top of Mount Panorama, taking in all the glory.
It's the final time we see a Holden Commodore racing in this iconic race before Supercar switches over to the Gen 3 era. So I've got to go with a Holden. We've talked about him so much here on our Prairie Show. He will start inside the top 10, even though he has a 3-spot grid penalty. He's only won this race once. Could have been twice last year, but we all know what happened. So I'm going with the number 97, Red Bull and Pull Energy Holden Commodore with Shane Van Gisbergen and his co-driver Garth Tander taking home the legendary Peter Brock Trophy and going and letting Holden win the last ever race for that iconic brand in Australia. So I'm going SVG and GT, taking home the Peter Brock Trophy.
Going for the easy pick there, Adam. Would not be surprised if SVG wins. I just wanted to be a little different since this is a special race. So when we get to the next races at Surfers Paradise and Adelaide, I'll probably go back to picking SVG to win those races. And looking at our weekend schedule, we'll be on the air for our regular Grid Live pre-race show at noon Eastern, Saturday afternoon here in the United States, and then Sunday Grid Live wrap up 90 minutes after the NASCAR Cup Series race at the Charlotte Roval, and then Monday another edition a Grid Live Encore. Be sure to follow us on social media. I want to give a big thank you to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Mark, Deshell, and Robin. Thank you so much for all that you do. And click on the link to our Patreon or buy me a coffee for a one-time donation. Also use public.com to invest in the stock market. Use the code GRIDnet to earn free stocks. Get started and utilize the stock market for your own personal investment. For Adam Lemerise, I'm Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. Thank you all for watching. Enjoy the great race.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.